welcome to Utah. Sort of. You know, I wanted to make this video, this Utah video, to all my Christian brothers and sisters, or at least most of them. They keep telling me how bad it is in Utah. I'd like to tell you how good it is in God. I'm sorry. I don't get it. You know, I'm hearing this story, this report, this buzzword, this idea that's being promoted and being accepted by a lot of people that I think have been, no offense, deceived. You know, they're telling me that there's giants in the land. There's like, oh my God, it's so bad that you don't want to send anybody here. You want to make sure that they're mature Christians, that they can handle it, you know, that it's such a terrible place. I mean, you know who lives there. You know who. Yeah, you know. Or do you? You see, I keep getting told about spiritual warfare, you know, and kind of like, you know, spiritual oppression, you know, and like depression and obsession. It's almost like, you know, everybody's got a story about how bad it is instead of how good it is. Man, I'm thinking how good it is of God to give me a place to come and share His grace. Now, maybe I'm a little weird because I came from the Jesus movement, but I know a guy that was whacked out on acid. Hey, if you don't think he had demons, guess what? I remember a church that I had prayed that God would send someone at some point in time to this town that had a reputation of burying pastors. Now, the way they said it was that Klamath Falls, Oregon, was the place where pastors came and ended their ministry. The reason being is that the majority of those who had come before always had run off with their secretary, or somehow infidelity had constantly been one of those things that was popular in Klamath Falls, Oregon. As a matter of fact, it got so bad that they used to say that Klamath was the only town that you could shoot your wife and get away with it. I remember even the mayor in Klamath Falls saying about disabled people in the newspaper that handicapped and disabled people ought to go back in the closet where they belong. I remember personally being there before there ever was a Calvary Chapel, that most of the churches were teaching, quite frankly, topical studies that were interesting but never directive. It was always abstract, not really towards the object of the person of Jesus himself. I was a little frustrated by that. You know, people would talk about loving each other, and then they would literally go out and love each other. Now, there was a witches' coven, you know, and there was like animal sacrifices going on at old OIT. You know, there were things going on in the woods that people didn't talk about that I went out to go see about. And there were things that were really weird and really bizarre and even perverse and animistic and you name it. There was some really wacko stuff going on. Matter of fact, I met a Russian Christian Pentecostal who was called one of the leapers and dancers and leapers and shouters that had come over from Russia. His family had been there for a long time during the time when land was given away to the people in order to come to the area of Klamath Falls in Northern California to be farmers and to do those things. And his family had been there a long time, and they were a closed church, but they had these interesting things that they used to do, you know, that they used to talk about spiritually. Now, for most of us that are like, you know, maybe not so familiar with the things of the spirit or spiritual world or into other things, it's a little weird. It's a little bizarre. But you see, I had some cutting teeth on some real experiences that don't make much sense in some ways to some people that have never been there. Now, I appreciate somebody that shared with me recently, you know, about his ministry, and he'd gone over to Russia, and he'd been in places, and he'd cast out demons, you know, and seen different spiritual possessions, and he was shocked the first time that he couldn't cast out, you know, this demon that, you know, he'd run into, the situation. And Jesus talked about that, you know, except that with that prayer and fasting. But there's a lot more that we don't know than we do know, and Pigs in a Parlor isn't exactly a good book to be learning from. And while Peretti is a nice fiction writer, except the Lord really leads you, you know, you may be misled. So I find it interesting that here I come to this land that is just beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's like you look around and you see, wow, look at the prosperity. Look at the people. Look at the diversity. Look at the way things are growing. Look at the land itself. Look at the way things are being developed. And I think, man, surely God is in this place. I think this is the land flowing almost like with milk and honey. Man, it's so cool. It could be great. As a matter of fact, I think it says that it's elevated, and maybe it's self-elevated in one way, or maybe it's elevated in another way, and maybe we could be elevated in some way to enjoy this place we call Utah. But you see, when I came here, I kept running into my brothers and sisters, in the Lord, and they were all telling me how bad it was. And I kept going, Lord, is my discernment like whacked out? Am I all about? I mean, when I lived somewhere else and thought about coming here, oh sure, I had my own misconceptions. I was raised around Mormons. I was raised working for a Mormon family. As a matter of fact, all my life, at some point in time, I've always been dealing with people that are part of that church and that religious system that obviously is not Christian, but they do a very good job of looking very religious, much like the Orthodox Jews do, much like a lot of legalistic type of religions do. They look really good. You scratch the surface and yeah, of course the skin bleeds, but you go a little deeper and, I found most people that live a very righteous lifestyle often have some kind of unrighteousness beneath the surface. And I found that true every place I went, wherever I dealt with those people and got personally involved with those that were involved in any type of religious righteousness like that. For instance, like in New York City, the rabbis having the rabbis good inside of Hasidism. You couldn't be in the community and get away with that. But of course, if it's a Gentile down the street,
outside of where people were watching, until the rabbis were video recorded. Hey, most people thought of, like rabbis as being, especially the Orthodox rabbis, being perfectly righteous and holy. Funny how people that are holy look like that until God reveals the truth.
And I think that's what I found here in Utah. I see in just my own experience here in VidDevo and my own experience moving in, not so much spiritual oppression, but so much spiritual challenges. Development of the person and the patience that we need in order to be here long term. Because you see, it's easy to be a flash in the pan. It's easy to have expectations and have realizations. The expectation is you want to do some mega thing, and be a mega part and be all these other things that you've heard of everyone else doing. Some huge church or some huge effect, or you don't want to go to where, there's poor people. Because I went down the street, and I kind of went to the Latino side of Salt Lake City. I went to some of the other different cultural, ethnic little conclaves that are involved in this state we call Utah. I drove south towards Provo and I saw a different part of the state. I drove north towards Ogden and I saw different aspects of different people, personalities, and groups that I didn't hear my brothers and sisters talking about. They're always talking about one group, one problem, one social, really, event of types of people that they seem to have an issue with that really I have no problem at all. Hey, those that are healthy don't need a physician, but those that are, in need, those that are weak, those that are feeble, those that are hungry, those that are thirsty, can come and find water, can find food, can find shelter, can find Jesus minister to them. And I did see that on the streets. But you see, sometimes I think maybe we get a little too caught up in what we want to be about. We want to have fine clothes, look nice. We want to have a temple on every corner. Now, it may be our own temple or our own church or our own Calvary Chapel or our own ministry. But in some ways, that's more of a spiritual warfare of fighting myself than fighting something outside myself. Because I've been where places are spiritually oppressed. Oh, it's evil. Don't get me wrong. There are places like down in Louisiana, right? it's some tough stuff. There are places like in Oregon, oh, it's some rough stuff. There are places in Jerusalem where I say we know where Satan's seat sits, but literally, Rome may be quite close to being next to that. But the point is that in Jerusalem, there's even a syndrome called Jerusalem syndrome. That's where people get so spiritually messed up. They get caught up in the pressure or oppression of what's going on at the place that they lose their mind, so to speak. And mental health experts even talk about it. Even in Orthodox Judaism, they talk about spiritually being not possessed, but obsessed by something harassing them. Because once they're out of that environment, they're fine. Matter of fact, some of the hospitals even recommend shipping them out in order to get back to what they're all about, so they have their, so to speak, spiritual gyroscope put back in place, and they could be, their mental health comes restored back to them. Now, tourism doesn't hear much about that, but when you live in Israel, like I did, when you live in Jerusalem nonstop, like I did, there's a lot going on. And it's spiritual, and it's spiritual warfare. Now, spiritual warfare can occur anywhere, in any place, at any time. What your definition of spiritual warfare is, will determine usually whether you're accurate according to the Bible or not. I understand what some people are saying about, spiritual warfare, coming here in Utah, but I look at the sun shining right now, and I know that the weather's going to change. And so, because I know that, I'm prepared for that. I didn't come here with any, pie in the sky ideas. I came here everywhere I've gone, I've met people. I've met humanity. I've met, different things going on with different peoples at different times, that they go through different situations and circumstances, that some of it may be involving some spiritual aspect of the reality of life being a tripartite existence, meaning that we have a soulful life, very emotionally based. We have a practical life, very physically based. But we also have a spiritual life, very unseen things of the spirit that go on in this world that some of us understand and know about. And some of us maybe don't know so much as we think we know, and we blame much of what is going on something else that might be not so much applied as it could be perceived, that God would give us revelation about how we are to deal with it. Me personally, since I've gotten here, it's been, a hassle, I guess you could say in a way, but nothing that's abnormal or unusual compared to what I've been to in other places, other times, that are far worse than anything I've seen so far or heard stories of from anyone at all. Boy, I could tell you some really strange spiritual experiences that nearly got me killed. And I know other missionaries the same way. I don't see it so bad. I've seen, already, some pastors that, maybe they're a little kind of off track. They're doing topicals, it's like, well, okay. Or maybe some other ones doing whatever. And, I think that, we can all be, led or misled, or we can all be kind of off track or on our own track, or, whatever, making our own kind of music. But what I see really is that if our foundation is sure, if our confidence is placed in God alone, and we don't trust in ourselves, but we trust in the Lord with all our heart, meaning not in our own understanding, but in all our ways acknowledging Him and Him directing our path, I don't see any problem. Like I said, since I moved in, it's always been challenging. I may have had to do long-term things that used to take me short-term to accomplish. There may be some things like Daniel, where, Daniel prayed, and God sent the answer, and then the angel was harassed until he could bring the answer. That, we're told that the king of, I can't remember which king it was, but basically an angel of demonic activity, had, slowed him down, but it didn't stop him. You see, that's the point I'm trying to make here. It didn't stop him, and it didn't change his message. His message was still the same. He didn't say, you're in such a bad spot that I couldn't get to you in Babylon. It was like, it's so rough. I don't know about you, but rough and tough just makes me count it all joy when I fall into divers trials and tribulations. Working my faith brings patience, but that patience doesn't perfect work, the man of God make fully equipped, able to do abounding in every work that God has given him. I seem to see most of the time when I listen, when I watch, when I examine, when I say, okay, bro, what really are you saying? And I'm very, very, very watching and thinking and, saying, I'm not hearing exactly, like, why it is a spiritual warfare more than really just a place that God is choosing to use to teach you something. It may be a dry and thirsty land for you, where there may be limited water, although I see the Salt Lake out there and I go, whoa, man, awesome. I look at the mountains and I go, whoa, check it. You got snow every year. I look at, kind of the things going on around me and I say, ooh, wow. It may be abused in some ways, but I don't know about you, it don't look so bad to me. I see some of the things that go on as normal to humanity. I see the things as being what Jesus would have said, hey, I'm come to give life and life more abundantly in this world as well as eternal life to come. And that there's nothing that can separate you, if you come to me, from me coming to you. I don't see the reasoning behind this spiritual warfare and how bad Utah is at all. None whatsoever. I have met Mormon missionaries before and now. I have met Mormon bishopric, the guys in charge, presidents, whatever, things like that, in their own little, I can't even think of the word right now because I'm kind of drinking Pepsi instead of coffee. But I'm thinking dominion because I'm thinking spiritual warfare, and I wanted to give a teaching on spiritual warfare, but the Lord says, no, just teach about how I overcome. And in the letters to 7 churches, you see some pretty bad things going on for some of them, and that's bad. That's rough. That's tough. I don't see that really happening now, or even in America, where people are saying, oh, America's gone downhill, down the tube. I look in the past and I saw it just as bad, just as weird, just as whacked, just as warped, by presidents that, were just as unloved. Nixon wasn't exactly this lovable. I liked him because I thought he was one of the smartest, most intelligent vice presidents there ever was. And as president, I didn't see him as being a crook. I saw him as being a normal, corrupt politician. I don't see any politician not unethical, immoral, and doing things that aren't right. I see all politics as being, we the people manipulated, just like Aaron was manipulated by the people to create the golden calf, and then denying the fact that he created it, that he fashioned it with his hands. Oh, he threw it in the fire and it popped up. You see, I learned a long time ago that religious people, like Aaron, or politicians like Aaron, and maybe Miriam, and maybe getting involved in that kind of revolt thing, if they're not led by the Spirit and not filled with the Spirit, they'll do anything, really, that the people want. And that's what I see sometimes happening maybe here in Utah. What do you want? Really? What do you want from God right now? Humbling yourself out, cutting out your flesh, putting yourself back up on the cross, denying yourself, and saying, hey, I live here. What do I want? Well, I want people to be saved. Really? Are you sure? Or do you want to chalk it up and rack it up on your Bible? Or, you kind of want to, you got a mixed bag, here where you're kind of going, yeah, I want them saved, but I also want them to go to church, and I want to do this, that, and the other thing. Because, you see, if we commit our way to the Lord and trust also in Him, then we're willing to let God do what His will is, according to any person's choices, according to any move of the Spirit, the way that God wants to do it. And I don't know about you, but I've never seen anyone beat someone into death or beat someone into the kingdom of God. I've never seen anyone win someone to Christ. I have seen God draw people to Himself, and He has saved those with whom He had already foreordained and pre-planned and written in His Lamb's Book of Life, that they would come to salvation because we are participating with Him by what He's doing, and seeing those things that He's doing and working with Him to the accomplishment of the glory of God being revealed and made manifest in our own bodies and flesh, words and deeds, our souls, our minds, even our very smiles, laughter, joys. I don't see this. Why come to Utah? Except among Christians, Now I'll see non-Christians, same thing. But can I tell you something? I don't think the Mormons are running around going, why Utah? I don't think they're saying that. I don't think some of the people that are here that have come from other places, like Latinos and poor people, and some of the people that are maybe immigrant or students or whatever, have come here and said, why? But they've come here and said, wow. They've come here and said, whoa, I like it. They've come here to build, to construct, to not obstruct or abstract what God is doing. They have come here with maybe a dream, a vision, or an idea, and they are going forward with it according to the measure of faith that they've been given. And maybe some aren't saved yet. Maybe some have yet to be saved. And maybe some we are saving in some way by sharing with them the gospel and telling them about Jesus. But I don't see Jesus jumping up and stopping the Roman Empire. As a matter of fact, I kind of see Jesus telling the disciples, watch out. Don't get caught up in the nationalistic movement that is going to happen, because you're going to get scattered. You're going to get blasted. You're going to get crushed. At least the nation is. But the gospel will go to the four corners of the earth, because I will send you out through the circumstances of life that are going to scatter you into every nation, because that's where I want the gospel to go. And because you are my servants and my disciples, I'm sending you out, but you're going out one way or another. And you'll see that in 70 AD, God accomplished his purpose that the church would not do. You see, the church didn't get off its butt and get out and get going until it got crushed, until it got stomped on, the entire nation, by the revolt of the political Christians, the political Jews, the political people that revolted against the status quo of the Roman Empire owning the majority of power in the world at that time and causing the nation itself to no longer exist. Now, what was the good that came out? God said go, and they could have went. They went out sort of, but not really. And so when the famine came, and they were kind of like, hanging out in Jerusalem, they were starving, and they could have gone out after they combined everything, but they didn't. So God says, okay, fine, watch this, boom. 70 AD, when the revolt came, the Bar Kokhba revolt, that the rabbis had said, this is the Messiah, even though, the churches said, nah, that's not my Messiah. God didn't spare them from being sent out. God used the circumstances to drive them out into the four corners of the earth, into all the world, into all the nation where the gospel was meant to go. One way or another, God's going to do that in circumstance or in your going forth. But you see, your attitude about it will be one of two different perspectives, like I just said. One way you could say, hey, we lost our nation. Oh my God, what are we going to do now? We're no longer Israeli, but we're children of God, sons of God, appointed, anointed, and chosen to share the gospel everywhere we go. And so we're being sent out by the circumstances of life that God has, by his Spirit, moved us from the land, Israel, to the entire four corners of the earth. That thank God he's done that and provided the means with which we can do that through persecution and suffering and chastisement, even to the saving of the Gentiles and the salvation that's gone forth. Or you could look at it as being persecuted, oppressed, depressed, and bummed out, beat up, beat down, stomped on. Kind of like what I keep hearing happens here, supposedly, in Utah. I got news for you. I have a spiritual warfare challenge for you. I'm not bummed. Challenged? Perplexed? Yeah, of course. I'm just now getting this Utah VidDevo sign, or Utah camera back. My Orbitsphere camera has been like, no real practical reason why it's not worked. No real technological reason why it hasn't worked. No real, things that you could put on the physical realm to understand why it's worked. But I've been harassed by it to not accomplish the things in my day that I normally do, that I want to do, that God has shown me I can do. Doesn't mean my offering each day of the things that I do with my hands, the things I care about in my heart, the things that I speak with my mouth, the things that I see and hear, and the things that I proffer to the Lord my God by the end of my day are all what I wanted to do or wanted to accomplish. But by grace and the wisdom with which he's given me, I am thankful for those things that he has given me in the day that I can do, that I've accomplished and left to the next day for God to do and to accomplish eventually. Even to, as I'm saying, the bringing back of my Orbitsphere camera so that I can record Utah VidDevo in a easier, more profitable, more sound check, sound bite way that makes it work in a better way than what it did before. And each day I see that. I'm constantly, every day, either harassed or in some way challenged. And I laugh about it because I tell my wife, I said, well, that's a demon. He's just trying to harass you. He's trying to steal your joy. Because the only thing that can happen in this land is your joy. If the joy of the Lord is your strength, then the only thing that the enemy can do is steal your joy. Oh, sure, he can deceive you and mislead you and kind of like this, self-deception and all those things, if you let him. But stealing your joy is a different kind of thing. That's something they're good at. That's something that usually happens to Christians a lot. In the Jesus moment, we saw it happen pretty fast, like in the 1980s, when suddenly, instead of preaching and teaching about Jesus coming again soon, and the on-fire onslaught of like, wow, Jesus coming tonight, some people got caught up in the 88s thing, or got caught up in different, quote-unquote setting times and dates, and supposedly so did Calvary Chapel at one time. And all of a sudden there's a shift, if the Lord tarries. We've heard a lot about that lately, if the Lord tarries. The Lord ain't tarrying. I got news for you. I haven't shared or changed the message that I've shared from the beginning that I got saved. The joy of the Lord is my strength. Jesus is coming soon. Today if you hear his voice, harden not your hearts as a provocation, but rather let us offer up to the Lord our day, that he may lead us in the way that we should go. For today we can lift up our soul, and we can say to it, "O soul, why art thou disquieted within? Fear not, for I shall yet praise him." We can take this day and make it a praise and a rejoicing unto the Lord, where we're told to let us rejoice and be glad, for this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. I'm glad I'm where I'm at. I'm thankful I am who I am. I'm rejoicing in being in this state called Utah. I am thrilled about the beauty and the glory of God revealed in all I see and do throughout my day. I am fascinated by what God is going to accomplish today with me, with you, and with all those people that have been here all along. Because I'm going to watch them turn around, turn upside down, turn back to bearing fruit, then bearing their cross, bearing the joy, then bearing the sufferings, bearing and being through all these things, overcome not just by the word of their testimony and the blood of the Lamb, and loving not their lives even unto death as though they were some kind of martyrdom syndrome, but rather showing forth the rejoicing in the praise of our God that he has given us more than waters that trickle out from some mountain stream, but joy that bubbles forth and splashes out and washes clean all those around that can't help but be seen, that they have laughter, they have joy, they have smiles. They are able to endure this land of spiritual warfare and oppression, supposedly, with such a light and a joy that they look like they're on fire and they're happy about it. They don't have anything negative to say. As a matter of fact, the things that are pure and holy, the things that are profitable, the things that are of good report, the things that can make for and encourage each other. And they are telling one another in psalms and songs and spiritual songs, making melody in their heart with the words that they use, the very laughter on their lips, the very joy of children, dancing and bubbling and being almost like a God spell unto the area that they once thought was under the spell of Satan. I got news for you. The LDS, or the Orthodox Jew, or any legalistic crew that you know, doesn't have joy. And if you don't, you're no better than they are. Because if the joy of the Lord is your strength, and you're not joy-filled and joyful, and rather using your strength, then really you're going forth in weakness. And can I say something to you? I don't know yet too many, except for the newbies that came along, and I've seen some of the newbies that I'm going. They look joyful at times. They look joyful. They're looking a little weary sometimes, but they look joyful. You watch and see. You come and see some of the places that I talk about. Well, the church doesn't come and see things, so I use that one. But you watch. My help cometh from the Lord who maketh, my help cometh from the mountains, it's there right next to me, Wasatch, but my help cometh from the Lord who maketh heaven and earth. You watch and see where I come from, what I do with my trials and tribulations, with my oh no's, and oh my God, and I'm like, oh no, oh my God, Mr. Bill, I'm living in Utah attitude, And you'll see that I'm laughing and dancing and rejoicing. I'm kicking it, man. I don't know where you're going or where you're coming from or what you're learning. But you want to know more. You want to grow more. If you want to be a part of this, like, kind of, I'm not saying be a coach of happy camper routines, where you say, oh, well, I've always got to be, and put a smiley face on it, and put a little stamp seal of phoniness, on top of what you're really struggling with inside. I'm saying, yeah, of course I go through struggles. Of course it's tough. Of course the reality of this land is dry. There's good soil and there's bad soil. There's every soil and every type and every analogy that Jesus ever taught. But my God, it's no different than, dare I say, a stiff-necked Jew. Hey, the reality is true. If God in part has blinded the children of Israel and they got saved, many of them, to this day, there's still Jews getting saved, how much more so shall we not enjoy and be a part of this great harvest that's going on, whether you can see it or not, that the fields about, all around you, are bountiful. Even from Woods Cross to Bountiful to Salt Lake to Ogden to St. George to wherever north is and east and west to, I don't know what that city is with the little casinos or whatever, but you know what I'm saying. Everywhere. In this land, it's all of it is kind of like a land of change. There's always storms and thunder and lightning, and I'm kind of going, well, yeah, there's thunder and lightning, and, I don't hear the Lord in that. And there's, sunshine, and there's rain. I don't hear the Lord in that, but, in a still small voice, I do hear the Lord. And in the morning, oh, Lord, in the morning will I direct my prayer to thee, and will look up. Because, you see, most of the people I'm talking to aren't telling me to look up. They're telling me to look around. They tell me to look at what I can find on every street corner. They're telling me to look at the Word, look down, into what I'm studying, into scriptures that I'm applying. And those things I do anyways. Oh, I look around, I can see what I see. I look around and I see what I know. I look in the Word and I do know what I'm reading. But you see, I also look up. And oh my God, when I look up and I see a sunrise, what do I got to worry about? When I look up and I see the stars in the sky at night, especially here in Utah when it's all like so lit up, oh, wow, what do I got to worry about? When I see the thunder and lightning blasting away and the wind blowing, you think I'm worried? Man, I'm digging it. So maybe you're not living it yet. Maybe you're not loving it. Maybe you're not doing it. Maybe you just aren't grooving in it, but I got news for you. There's more to life than, whining about it, than maybe even not whining, some of you, that maybe you just, a little burned up, beat up, a little bummed out, a little blown out, maybe you're just kind of like, your little fruit is like really little fruit. You can have more. You can taste and see that the Lord is good. You can be bountiful in this land. You can be bigger than you think you are and more accomplished than you ever dreamed of. As a matter of fact, God has something in store for you because He brought you to this place at this time for a specific reason. And it wasn't to be a vessel of dishonor. It's rather to be blessed in the land that people said was so oppressed. People are going to shout and wonder and go, what is going on in Utah? Have you heard the stories? Have you heard the news? God was in this place. And Jacob said the same thing, and he said, little did I realize it, but God was in this place. I got a prophetic word for you if you like those kind of terminologies. I got a biblical word for you if you like that better. I got a word of prophecy if you like that. I got a word of knowledge. I've got a word of wisdom for you. You know what it is? God is in this place. Yeah. You know why? Because you are, so am I. And if Jesus is in us, God is in this place. Now let's just live like it.